You are listening to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, a podcast released on the first 3 Wednesdays of the month. Family crisis, relationship crisis, addiction crisis, no two crisis situations are the same. They vary by family, individual, and relationship. They can encompass complex family dynamics, emotional distress, anger issues, and entitlements, and often involve substance abuse. This podcast addresses these issues and others surrounding the addiction epidemic currently plaguing this country and the world. There is hope and help.
Are you stuck, scared, or unsure of what to do next? If a situation with a loved one, spouse, or even a child has started to spiral, possibly becoming dangerous or threatening, it's time to seek help. My name is Scott H. Silverman. I help families navigate crisis situations. I'm the person you turn to in order to get you and your loved ones unstuck.
Welcome back to the show. This is Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour. I'm Michael Glenn Moore, Scott's co-host. Scott, what do we have going on for today?
Well, today, you didn't notice it, Michael, but I mentioned it to you. I've lost a pound. So I only have about 35 more to go from what I've gained this last year.
I think your ears look smaller.
Well, I got a haircut, and I think that helped. I'm wearing a dark shirt and I put my bright lights on. So today we have a special guest. We'll get into that in just a second. Anyway, I just want to say hello. Hi, I'm Scott A. Silverman. Welcome to our happy hour. And we put our show together every week, and we bring in people that talk about things that I think are important, not only for all of you and your family, but for those you care about. Because, funeral avoidance is something we're really about here, and one of the things I know I want to share is my new book's coming out soon, the opioid epidemic, but we're going to talk about Kevin's today, so I won't push it too hard, but we're glad you're here. And please don't forget that if there's something you want us to talk about, if there's something we need to talk about, if there's something we haven't talked about, or if there's something we've actually talked about and we got it wrong, let us know. And you can call me directly or text me at 619-993-2738, 619-993-2738. So that will get us going into our 30-minute segment here. So Kevin, you pronounce it Sabet, is that correct?
Sabet. Like don't forget Sabet.
Don't forget Sabet. All right, Kevin A, and the A stands for
Abraham.
Kevin Abraham Sabet. Very good. PhD I got on your bio here. So right. I'm going to read a little something here because I want to get it right. Sure. These are a lot of big words because this guy is really famous, and I want to get it right. An affiliate of the Institution for Social and Policy Studies and the medical school at Yale University, and dubbed by NBC News as the prodigy of drug politics, author, consultant, advisor to 3 U.S. presidential administrations, which I don't even understand how you do it because you only look like you're 29 years old.
Thank you. That's a good Zoom filter I'm using. So
yeah, exactly. Well, whatever it is, you keep it up. So Kevin has studied, researched, written about, implemented drug policy for 25 years. He's currently the president and CEO of SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, a nonprofit organization he founded with Congressman Patrick Kennedy and David Frum. His latest book, Smokescreen: What the Marijuana Industry Doesn't Want You to Know, is distributed by Simon & Schuster. He's the only person appointed by Republican Democrats to work at the White House Drug Office, and he's a columnist for Newsweek. He received his doctorate from Oxford University. Now, where I met Kevin, and you may not remember this, you were presenting here in San Diego, and I believe it was Red Ribbon Week, and you said something that impressed me, and I think I went up and said hello, and you looked at me like, who are you? And I said, I'm just some old guy trying to figure out how to save lives. But you were very kind, and you shared about how the marijuana industry was headed in the same direction, if I'm correct, that the tobacco industry is in. And I like to refer to you, and I hopefully doesn't make you cringe or embarrass you, that I think you personally, in my opinion, are the Dr. Fauci of the marijuana world. Because every time I hear you speak, well, first of all, use a lot of big words I don't understand, but that explains your college education. But you talk about it in a way that is not only informative, but it's touching, it's experiential, it's fact-oriented, you have evidence around it. And, it seems like you're one of the few people that's really out there talking about what it really means today, what marijuana is doing today in a way that people really need to hear about. So congratulations on your new book, and let's get right into it. Before we do though, Kevin, I'm going to give you a minute or two just to tell everybody what I completely forgot about you and what we should all know about you.
Well, no, that's very kind of you to say, Scott. I think you're very nice. I haven't heard that comparison before, but I guess I'll take it. Although he's a puzzle to me that Dr. Fauci would be so divisive, but I guess he is, and sometimes I am, because I think that some of the things I'm trying to say are, frankly, are cutting into people's bottom lines and their profits, and people don't like that. But we have to continue to, with respect and in a civil way. And, Barack Obama always said that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's true. And I've tried to carry that with myself. And no, nothing else to say about me. I'm just happy to come here and talk about this issue and my new book, Smokescreen, which I'm really excited about.
Right. What about family? I don't know much of personally. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, the short answer is I have a wife and daughter my daughter's 18 months old, and she is napping quietly. And thankfully my wife and the grandparents are looking at the monitor in case she wakes up. So I don't have to ditch the podcast here. I'm very lucky for my family. And actually in the book, in one of the chapters, I actually talk about my upbringing and my parents immigrated here from Iran in 1960s, which was not very common then. Most of the Persians came after the revolution in the early 80s, but my parents came a lot earlier. And I talk about that, and I talk about sort of why I'm even into this, because I don't really love talking about myself. And the publisher actually and the editor really pushed me and said, you have great facts, you have great stories in here, and hopefully we'll get into some of those today with you, Scott. But then he said, one thing is missing, and you have to put it in there. I won't take no for an answer, and that is why you are interested, and what is it your upbringing? Tell us about that. And so I actually wrote about that in the book in a way that I've never really disclosed, because I'd like to stay private. This issue can be very divisive, and I for the safety of my family and people I love, I really try and keep that part private. But I hopefully did it in a more tactful way there. So people who want to read the book can check out the longer version of what I just said.
So for a guy that's trying to keep private, just so you know, it's over. Our audience is kind of restricted because Michael doesn't want a big crowd. But I've seen you a couple different times. And by the way, I've used that example, Fauci, when I saw you on that big what was it, a big Zoom meeting about a week ago. I put it in the chat. I said, this is the guy. I don't know if knew it was me or not, but that was me. And when I say that, what I mean by that, just so you know, not from a political standpoint, but from an informational standpoint, and the fact that you are taking a position that isn't popular, and you are rubbing it against the grain, if you will. And I've always been one of those people, kind of an outlier, and people refer to me as a Mustang. And I think when you're trying to help people, especially the nonprofit world, and I'm out of that now, I was in it for a long time. It is hard because you have to honor your donors, investors, and supporters. You have to take the political side of nobody, technically, to be neutral, so you can get resources from everybody.
Yeah.
And you're talking about something, when I hear, and I do a lot of interventions, a lot of family navigating, when I hear mothers tell me and dads tell me that, well, their kids no longer taking oxy, they're smoking marijuana. Right. And we think it's okay. And then they go, what do you think? And I say, well, I'm 36 years sober, and when I was smoking marijuana, it was, I think, 3, maybe 4% THC. And today it is what, Kevin?
Well, it can be as high as 99% THC. I just got a picture of a contest winner of marijuana, and it's a picture of what I thought looked like a Swarovski crystal or an ice cube. And that was actually 99.9% THC concentrate. The smokable flower can be up to 30, 40%. On average is between 10 and 15%. So it's 3 to 4 times stronger than it used to be, even on average.
Right. In California, we had Humboldt County and Garberville. We were growing purple sensimilla back in the day. So I'm not going to go there because it just makes me salivate, and I don't want to, there's not enough on the planet left for me. So tell us a little bit about your extensive experience leading, advising, and implementing the drug policy, your nonprofit, and your smart approaches to marijuana, and how the two have informed and influenced your new book, Smokescreen. By the way, congratulations again on the new book, because I think have you got a lot of sales so far? Or are you waiting for more?
We've done pretty well in the first couple of weeks. We're looking at a very big week this week. And so we'll know Wednesday nights or Thursday what happened for the week ending basically tomorrow on Sunday. So we're going to know when, basically, this Thursday, what's going to happen. So tomorrow, I guess. And so, so thank you. No, it's going well. I didn't really plan to write this book. This is actually the second book I've written. The first one was called Reefer Sanity: 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. And, with that one, I had served in the Obama administration, the third time I was in government, for about 2 years, or 2 years and some change. And, I kind of looked around and I realized that people were not getting the message on marijuana, and the research wasn't getting distilled. People had a total misunderstanding based on their own experience, which maybe was an innocuous experience 20 or 30 years ago. They didn't realize, they didn't go to the ERs, they didn't see the psychotic episodes, they didn't see the cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is basically uncontrollable vomiting. They didn't talk to the people in treatment who all said they started with marijuana. No one was saying they started with fentanyl or heroin. And so people were not getting the same impression that I was getting and that the data was showing me. And so I thought, when I left the Obama administration, I have to, get the word out on this. It's sort of the issue no one wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. It's the one drug issue that's divisive, because who's saying we should legalize heroin? I mean, now there are a few people, but really it's out of the mainstream. People aren't saying we should legalize methamphetamine and cocaine generally. So the marijuana issue is divisive. It's messy. Stay away from it. And I was even told by, and then politically, a lot of political people said, why would you go there? You're going to make a lot of enemies. You could go and talk about opioids, and you could, get money from big foundations and folks who don't want to get involved in the political mess that marijuana is. You could talk about the other things and really do well. And I actually felt that that was really a need. That told me I had to do the opposite of that. If everybody was going one way, I didn't want to go that way. And that's why I started SAM with former Congressman Patrick Kennedy. And it's why I wrote my first book, Reefer Sanity: 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. And I wrote that very, very quickly because I wanted to get the word out very fast. That's why I started SAM with Patrick. I thought it'd be a side gig. I thought it would be a small little thing I gave some speeches on, and I was doing other consulting and other work when I left the Obama administration and started it. But it basically, has blown up into something a lot bigger. It's really more than a full-time job now. And starting around 3 or 4 years ago, people started approaching me with stories. Moms talking about their kids being addicted, lab owners in Colorado talking about how the THC levels that the industry wants them to publish is not the THC level that is actually there, and it was a scandal. Former regulators who had retired, and they could finally talk to me and say, Kevin, this is not being regulated in Colorado the way you think it is, or everybody thinks it is. We're not doing a good job. I need to tell my story. So all of these stories started accumulating a good 3 or 4 years ago. And it's taken a very long time to write this book. And after extensive interviews and research and a lot of other things, that's how this book was born, unlike Reefer Sanity, which was basically written as quickly as possible. And so, this book is sort of a collection of those stories. There's still a lot of citations. There are a lot of references still. The publisher said, why put any references, Kevin? Because this is a great story. You don't see stories with references. And I said, well, that was one thing I had to insist on. I said, listen, this is a scientific issue. I want to stay on the science. I want to show people what I'm talking about. I don't want them to take my word for it. Let's make it easy. I want references. And so there's 353 references or something. So it ended up being a lot, but it's not a book of just mere facts. That's not what it is. It has the facts, but it's really a book of these stories. And I go into depth in a way that I've never done before. So that's really how the book was born.
Well, you sound like you're very proud of it, almost like it's your second child. So hopefully
Yes,
it will become that and embryonically just continue to grow. I think it's really important. So talk to us about THC and how today's marijuana looks different, because it's so interesting. Well, first of all, addiction disease of denial,
Yeah,
between the stigma
absolutely.
and the shame that goes along with it, and
Yes.
people stepping down, so to speak, well, we're not doing this anymore. He's now doing CBD and blah, blah, blah. So talk to us about the THC and how it's different in today's, and when I say today's product,
Yeah.
I don't even like to refer to it that way, but that's what it is. It is a big business, and it's only going to get bigger. And I understand there's conversations they're going to try to legalize it across the country. And decriminalization, personally, I think it's a great idea. Why put people in prison for selling marijuana? So tell us about the THC and what makes it different, that somebody should really be informed and hear this, because it is a game changer. And then maybe take a second or two and talk about what it does to the young person's brain from a developmental perspective, because that, to me, that's the fact that even talking to 16-year-olds are like, wait, what? My brain just goes to sleep for 10 years while I'm smoking it? Yeah. And when it wakes up, it's pretty pissed. So tell us about that, the THC.
Well, that's right. I mean, so we've just become better farmers as a country. We're much better at agriculture than we ever were. And marijuana is a plant. It has hundreds of components in it. It's actually a very complex plant, much more complex than opium poppy or coca leaves. And essentially what we've done is learned how to genetically breed the plant to breed out the other components and really increase the volume and level of one ingredient called THC. Why is THC important? It's because it binds to receptors in the brain and throughout the rest of the body, which means that it regulates and alters those feelings. So whether it's judgment, mood, memory, cognition, pleasure, pain, the reproductive system, the cardiovascular system, we have receptors there, the lungs, obviously, and so the respiratory system. And so that is the ingredient that the producers really try to emphasize, because that's what people like. They want to get high. That's why they're using it. They're not using it to, ingest something that doesn't change them. Why would you do that? So today's
remember, you're
marijuana,
talking to a recovering addict, so I get it.
Yeah, I know, right, exactly. And Bob DuPont used to say, or had a book called The Selfish Brain, and your brain is very selfish, because it wants to feel that. That's what addiction is. It's really, it's a desire to feel this way, and it's reward and memory, right? It's sort of remembering how good it was, and then just like the cycle of it, and now you do things that you never would have done otherwise, because your brain is selfish. Your brain wants to do it. Your heart is telling you, no, I shouldn't steal from my mom. That's not me. I never did that. Your brain is saying, I'm hungry. I want, and I need to fill this void. And the only way, you're going to have to steal that money, because that's how you're going to get what I'm hungry for. That's why the brain is so selfish. It doesn't take into account other people or the rest of your body or whatever. And THC, like a lot of other drugs, it alters your consciousness, and it alters your brain. It alters your mindset. And so we, as a society, and this industry, which actually started during the medical marijuana beginning days, in the 90s, begun to change the marijuana so that, hey, we can get a bigger and better high, and we can produce it in all different kinds of ways: vapes, dabs, waxes, other concentrates, elixirs, oils, lollipops, ice creams. I mean, you could go on and on. And so that's what this market did, is it produced all of these different ways. And your brain is under construction until about age 30 or so. And so that means it's vulnerable, right? So if you have a house under construction and there's an earthquake, it's vulnerable. It's more vulnerable than a house from 1910, which has just been sitting there on its foundation, right? So it's vulnerable because it's on scaffolding. It's on stilts. It's hanging in there. That's what your brain. It's under this construction, and when anything alters that, you have the then ability to really hurt yourself and really hurt your brain and your body. And that's why we're seeing very disturbing studies about, for example, mental health and psychosis and suicide among young people, and the connection with marijuana. The fact that marijuana increases your risk of suicide and psychosis and schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. The fact that it increases your risk for lower test scores and lower IQ by 8 points, which is a lot of points. 8 points is a lot. The fact that it increases your risk for cardiovascular complications with your heart, many, many, many other things. And now it doesn't happen to everyone. And this is where society misses the point, because a lot of society says, well, I'm fine, I did it, and these scary things didn't happen. So you're lying, and this is ridiculous. But that's like saying I drove 80 miles on the freeway today, and that means your speed limit is ridiculous. 65 is ridiculous. I drove 85 and I'm great. So that's BS. Nobody would say that's BS. You would say, yeah, I got away with it. But we know for a fact that when you speed, you increase your risk of a crash, right? But I got away with it. And probably it's not a good idea as a society to promote speeding. That's how I feel about marijuana. I'm not saying no one's going to do it. I'm not saying throw you in prison or give you a criminal record if you even do it. What I'm saying is we need to slow down and see the warning signs and really understand that for some people, this is really, really bad. Others can get away with it. But for some people, this is bad. My neighbor smoked cigarettes for 65 or 70 years, and he died of old age in his 90s. Does that mean we should smoke cigarettes? Does that mean smoking isn't tied to lung cancer? Of course not, right? But he got away with it. Great. And you don't know what you're going to get away with or not. And the guy who sped got away with it too. But a lot of people don't. And we're here to warn people that, hey, not everyone's going to get away with this. It sends probably a conservative estimate 700,000 Americans to the emergency room every year. It causes psychosis and schizophrenia for some people. It is the single factor in other kinds of ailments and even death with car crashes or COPD or these kinds of things. So it's about awareness. Again, that's a very long answer to your question, but
Yeah.
we have to understand what we're dealing with. It's not the marijuana of the past. It's basically a different drug.
Right. And I hear the story when people talk about alcohol because it's legal and always has been. And I said,
Right.
look, if you want to drink, and you're of age and it's legal, or even if you're a minor, if you want to drink, do it at home. Don't get behind the wheel. Because if you're impaired, now all of a sudden that percentage that are predisposed are now going to impact others, and especially if they're going 80 miles an hour and they're impaired on a freeway. So let me take you to the next one. So the marijuana industry has worked hard to sell the narrative that the drug is harmless, and I think that, I argue with families all the time, and I want to get into this conversation because I know there's a big one about replacing Oxycontin with marijuana to deal with pain. I was on a big conference call with over 1,000 people a couple of months ago with the VA. They're considering, not considering, they're just thinking about how they deal with it, and I know employers are having an issue, and we're in California. So we've been legalized for a while now. But before you go to the next question though, have you heard the term scromiting, by the way, yet?
I have. Scromiting is that uncontrollable vomiting. It's like screaming and vomiting at the same time. That's the cannabis hyperemesis syndrome.
Right. Ronit Lev, Dr. Lev is in San Diego.
Great.
And she said,
I love her.
She said, we came up with that one here at Scripps because people were coming in and screaming and vomiting. And, we're working hard in our community, but our oxy overdoses are up 400% from a year ago. So I was interviewed earlier today and they asked me, why aren't people getting the message? But let's get to the specific question about the industry, the marijuana industry, and they're going to do what tobacco did. I'm sure they're going to spend billions to get the market share and educate people and tell them how it's this or that, and they'll bend the rules. And soon, I guess we'll start seeing that, the Surgeon General warning on the side of edibles, if it isn't already there yet, and on bags of weed. But that's only by the license part of it, and being in San Diego, being a border town, I know marijuana sales are up from people who are below the radar, who are not doing it legally because they see the consumer, plus they're selling it for less. So tell us about the industry and what's going on with them.
Well, unfortunately, the industry is basically taking the playbook from the tobacco industry, and they're also, by the way, combining with the tobacco industry. So the tobacco industry is, investing millions and millions, billions actually of dollars in the marijuana industry. So that's one thing that we're seeing. We also see the alcohol industry investing hundreds of millions of dollars. We also see the marijuana industry itself growing from a very small industry 20 years ago with medical marijuana to another massive industry. So this is about money. And that's, the whole reason we're even having this conversation, why legalization is even a thing. It is one word and one word only, and that's profits. It's profits for a very small number of people who want to get very rich. And those are usually people that look like me and you. They're not going to be people of color, and the corner boy isn't going to go all of a sudden become a marijuana billionaire. It's not going to happen. But they're sort of selling it like that, which I think is very sad. But it's these massive industries, and we see how this movie ends. The tobacco industry lied to us for a century. They not only lied to us for a century, Scott, they also altered their product, tobacco, which actually had been used for thousands of years relatively safely. And they added nicotine. They invented the cigarette, which means you could rapidly ingest all of these harmful materials. They added tar, they added cancer-causing carcinogens, they added all kinds of things. And they made their product irresistible for a large swath of the population. That is happening now with the marijuana industry. It is because of this industry that we have these addictive products. It's not just because they fell out of the sky. And I think people need to understand that.
It's a great point. So who, in addition to the marijuana companies, stand to profit off of the marijuana? Actually, the term here is addiction, but it is a big business, and I'm sure they're going to have, if they don't already, have lobbyists that are doing whatever they can. Tons. So tell us about the who else is going to make money? Because when I talk about this, when I shared the story in the interview earlier today about why would someone sell a product that actually could kill the consumer? And this was a story done by the DEA, was shared with me when they interviewed a drug distributor around fentanyl. And his response was, every time somebody overdoses and dies, quote unquote, it makes the news and my sales go up. So I think of that person as my competitor, as someone who is a treatment provider and an interventionist. I think of that person, he's my competitor or she's my competitor. So what I try to do is find out, what is it I can do to intervene with the thinking with the family. So the presentation I make can become equally important from an informing perspective as the person who's trying to make fentanyl in their garage that they just got on the dark web that was shipped to them by USPS. And now they think they're going to make $1 million and it's going to be, put into counterfeit medication looking like Xanax. And I just lost a client of mine's son, 15. He was going to be 16 in June.
Oh my God.
Took a Xanax. It was whacked with fentanyl. And, we have a DA here who goes after these people. And evidently the dealer was arrested within 24 hours in a nice part of the community. And, the kid had 3 siblings, and they're all going to live with this horror now for the rest of their life, and the mom and all the extended family. And, it's just scary to me, but they got the dealer and he'll be prosecuted more than likely for murder. So, they raised the bar with Oxycontin and with opioids. And I hate to think that we have to get to that, but it sounds like we may have to with marijuana.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes we have to burn our hand to be convinced that the stove is on. And
more than once, it seems like, as well, for some people who are stubborn.
Absolutely. This is very alluring, and this industry is going to make it as popular. They already have celebrity endorsements. They have an army of hundreds of lobbyists. They are contributing to political campaigns. Now they're doing it's worse because in some ways versus fentanyl, they're doing it above board and underground. So the black market doesn't go away when you legalize. I actually interviewed a marijuana dealer for my book, speaking of interviewing drug dealers. And in that, I found that there was this person said that business was booming because they could undercut the legal price. They don't have to worry about who has an ID, and they get all the publicity, like you said, from society, which is glorifying this. They loved it. They absolutely loved it.
They don't have to develop consumer interest. The media will do that for them. And every time there's a bust out there, it happens. So
and every time the industry is out there and the politicians say that marijuana is quote unquote safer than alcohol, so therefore it's good, it's great for them.
Yeah, well, and God forbid they use it to replace opioids. It's going to be crazy. So how can listeners take action, hold the marijuana industry accountable, and what ways can they join you in the work they're doing?
Well, we have a movement, SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. They can join SAM. We're a small C3. They can donate. They can be part of this. They can really honestly get a few copies of this book, and which all the proceeds go to SAM, by the way. Get a few copies and give them to your friends. Bring them to the July 4th barbecue. You know, it's a really cool cover, if I say so myself, even though I didn't design it. I have nothing to do with it. But I thought it was great other than approving it. And it'll definitely turn some heads and get educated. And talk to young people about how their brains, they're being manipulated by this industry. I mean, when I talk to a young person, the first thing I tell them is not don't do pot. That's not what I say. The first thing I say is do your research and verify everything I'm saying, or you've heard me say. Do the research for yourself, verify it. Number two, your brain is a dollar sign for this industry, and whether you like it or not, you may love it, great, but you should know that this isn't just some innocuous thing. Every time you're using, the industry gets richer. Even if you bought it from a drug dealer or got it for free, they are on their way to a lifelong customer, and that's what they need to make money in this business. It's not about occasional users. It's not about someone who smokes a joint for their birthday. I could care less about that. It is about hooking, even if it's 20% of users, a small number of users who consume the vast majority of their product.
Right. And they consume it in a rather amplified way. So I'm thinking, as a marketing guy, if I was your marketing guy, I'd try to get your book into the marijuana distribution centers, because I remember years ago being in Vegas when I was sitting at a blackjack table before I got sober, and there was, they were just talking about this. Actually, I think I was sober when I saw it. At 1-800, Gamblers Anonymous brochures were sitting at the blackjack table. So if the pit boss thought you might have a gambling problem, just to cover their own liability, they would give you a flyer and say, call this 800 number.
The industry isn't there yet. They're not that big that they feel that secure. They certainly don't like what I'm saying. I'd love it if they did it. I welcome it. I'm not sure they're there yet.
Yeah, no. I mean, the other side, tongue in cheek, I'd throw a bud inside the book and you probably sell a million copies. Go. Yeah.
Right.
So let me ask you this, and we're just getting ready to wrap up. If you had a magic wand, what would you do with it right now?
I would educate people. And people might be surprised that my magic wand, I wouldn't use it to reverse legalization. I think legalization is a really bad idea. But frankly, the core of the issue is a lack of education. It's misinformation. So I would educate the ignorant on this issue, and then things will fall into place. That's what we have to do.
Okay. So one last question, then I want you to talk about your book and how people can get it. But what have we not asked you yet today that we should ask you?
That's a good question. We've covered a lot of ground. Maybe the one is this myth about addictiveness, because a lot of people say marijuana is not addictive because they didn't get addicted, or it's not like heroin or whatnot. The bottom line is, for a large portion of people, large enough that we should pay attention, 30% of past year users, depending on their level of use, could be 10 to 40% of young people, they meet the clinical diagnosis for addiction or dependence. For a substance use disorder, for a marijuana use disorder. They meet that clinical criteria, which are a bunch of criteria they have to meet. And we just learned from Nora Volkow, the real Dr. Fauci of our field, the head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. So she's equal to Dr. Fauci in the NIH, hierarchy there. She put out a study about a month ago, finding that marijuana users were twice, the prevalence of dependence was twice as likely for marijuana than for cigarettes in most cases, and for alcohol in all cases. And when I say cases, I mean it depended on how much they used, but really by and large, marijuana was the top one. And that's something that I think people would be surprised to hear.
Yeah, no, I'm shocked by it, because I know up to 15% of the nation has a potential addiction issue that will erupt over the next 12 months, and only 10% will seek help. So if that's doubled in the world of marijuana, extrapolate that over time. And, we haven't even talked about vaping, that new portal that kids are bringing THC into their body. So,
and it's like you said, denial.
It's not just a river in Egypt. That's for sure. That's for sure. So tell us real quick how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of your book, and then we'll turn it over to Mike, because he always asks the best questions.
That's great. Yeah, they can go to info@learnaboutsam.org, or learnaboutsam.org is just our website. Contact us there. They can go to smokescreenbook.com or Amazon, anywhere really for the book. They can get it there.
Great. Or they can always call me, and I'll get it over to you. All right, Michael. Kevin, great job today. Michael,
Thank
what's
you.
on your
Yeah,
mind?
yeah. Thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to
Sure.
talk with us today. I just want to reiterate something. Now, did you say earlier that the industry is making marijuana more addictive? Like, are they
Yeah,
adding? They're adding
yeah.
stuff to it, or just because they're
Well, they're increasing the THC, number one, and number two, as my book found, really kind of my book in some ways is like an investigation, really, of what's going on, talking to the people on the ground. So I found that they lie about the content, but there are also often additions to the marijuana that they would never reveal, whether it's mold, pesticide, bacteria. Now that in and of its own wouldn't make it more addictive; it would just make it more harmful. But the way they make it more addictive is, yeah, they increase the THC. Sometimes they don't even tell you that.
Well, that's fascinating because I'm not a child of the '70s, and
Yeah.
back in the day, I know there's probably a huge difference between marijuana
Oh,
now than from then. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Massive difference.
Okay, so do you have a quote to see us out with today?
I do here. I had so many quotes I wanted to read from the book, and I didn't want to read, from myself. So I'm going to read from somebody that it should have more credibility actually than me, because this is actually somebody who, was in favor of cautious legalization, which, I don't think cautious legalization is possible. We've never done anything cautious in our country when it comes to addiction. We're not cautious as a people. We are money hungry. We are drug hungry. We are all kinds of things. We're not cautious. However, I want to give you a quote from him. He passed away last year, Mark Kleiman, drug policy researcher, who I disagreed with, by the way, on tons, but that's why it has more credibility, I think. He said, the people now being hired by the guys in suits doing cannabis business stock promotions play by different rules. I expect them to have about the same ethical standards as lobbyists for the alcohol, tobacco, pharmaceutical, food, and fossil fuels industries. That is, I expect them to be utterly willing to sacrifice human health and welfare on the altar of the operating statement, just like those folks at VW who decided it would be a cute idea to poison the air just a little bit to goose the performance of their diesel driven cars. Couldn't have said it better myself.